guys, it's Dana. I've got another fun bag idea to share with you. It's the classic drawstring sack, and it comes together in a cinch. Drawstring bags are a really easy project to make. I started sewing them when my kids were little because it was a really easy thing for them to grab, fill with a few toys, and then they could take it in the car so they were entertained at the doctor's office or when we were out to eat at a restaurant. I would just say, go get your bag, and they could do it all on their own. I love that. You can make them in any size, from really little like this one to really huge, whatever you want. And I love making them as birthday gifts for family and friends. So here's what you need. A small amount of fabric and 2 strings. You want to cut 2 pieces of fabric that are 14 by 15 inches. And you can make that any size, but those are the dimensions for the bags that I just showed you. Now for your strings, you can use all sorts of different things too. What I'm using here is actually some bias tape, which you'll remember from our bias tape video. I just took some and I sewed down the sides of it so that everything is all enclosed. And then I cut each one 42 inches long. That's the great size for the dimensions of this bag. Other things you can use is rope, cording, which you remember from our piping video. You see, everything relates back to each other. Sewing is fun that way. Or something else that I really like to do is when I have scraps of fabric from, say, like a t-shirt, I cut some strips that are about 2 inches wide. It doesn't have to be precisely those measurements. And then when you yank it really hard, it kind of turns into like a little tube and makes a really cool string. Sometimes I'll tie a little knot in the end, and then I've got some really fun strings all ready to go, and it doesn't fray, so you can just cut the end. Good. Okay, let's set your strings aside and let's cut our fabric. I've got my fabric folded in half with the right sides together, and that just makes it easier when we start pinning that the right sides are already together. I'm using pinking shears to cut my fabric, which are those funny little zigzag scissors, and that just keeps the fabric from fraying over time with toys coming in and out of the bag, with lots of usage. You can also use a serger to serge off the seams to keep those from fraying, but these work just great. Or you could just leave the seams as they are, no big deal. Okay, I'm cutting that side, I'm gonna cut this side. And then we're gonna measure 14 by 15 inches. Let's see, 14 inches right there. Let's cut. And this is fabric that I'm using from my fabric collection called Boardwalk Delight. This is the Ferris wheel print, and you can see more about that in my video all about my fabric. Okay, 15 inches. And there we go. Okay, 2 pieces of fabric. Set that aside over here. And then one thing I want to show you on these drawstring bags, what makes it so unique and kind of fun, is that it has this casing in the top, and we need to leave a little hole in the side here for the strings to come in and out so that we can pull it closed. Grab a ruler, and I'm using a fabric marker, and first we're gonna measure down 2 inches from the top. So right like that, just place a tiny little mark. And then measure down 1 more inch. This is where the opening is going to be. Place another mark. Simple, and then do the same thing on the other side. 2 inches, and then 1 inch. Okay, now let's pin that together. And if for some reason those markings aren't standing out to you, you can place extra pins right there so that you remember to leave an opening. Because if you don't leave an opening, it makes it a little difficult to cinch your strings up. Okay, let's go to our sewing machine. We're gonna sew this similar to how we've done a tote bag. We're gonna start on one side, sew down, sew around the bottom, and come back the other side. But we have to remember to leave those 1 inch gap openings that we marked on our fabric. So come over to your machine. I'm threading mine with just a white thread. You're not gonna see this. Well, you actually might see it a little bit on the outside. So take that into consideration when you select a color. I'm just following the markings on my machine, and then I come over and I press my little magic button here, and it threads for me. I love my baby lock for that reason. Okay, we're ready to sew. Bring your fabric over, and I'm using about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Do a little backstitch at the beginning, as I'm always telling you. And I'm watching for my first marking here. I'm going down about 2 inches. And if you're going too fast, you can always adjust your speed control right here. And that is really great when you're trying to watch for those markings. Okay, I see the first one. I'm gonna stop, do a backstitch, just a few, come back, Okay, then I'm just gonna lift my needle, move down to the next marking, so I'm leaving that 1-inch gap, do a back stitch again, and then just keep sewing. Going down. When you get to the end, pivot and turn. You'll find that as you start sewing these bags that you're gonna love making them, and you're gonna start making them for all sorts of different things. These are awesome to take like as a little garment bag if you're traveling. You can put dirty clothes in it, or hair things, swimming suits, I don't know, so many different reasons for a drawstring bag. Okay, I'm almost to my marking on the other side. I'm gonna slow down here, do a little back stitch, lift my needle, move down 1 inch to my other marking, and then sew that last little 2 inches. Back stitch at the end, cut my threads. I love the cutting feature. Okay, now, one thing I want to do is to box out these bottom corners. We've done that before also in our tote bag video, and I'm just gonna do it real quick here. I'm not even gonna press anything. If you remember, I'm pulling these 2 seams together like that to create kind of a little triangle. And you can box this out whatever length you want. I like to do 2 inches. So I'm gonna mark down 2 inches right here and then draw a perpendicular line, which should be about 4 inches, straight across like that. There you go. I'm gonna sew that in place. Go back to your machine. Forward and back stitch. Sew it down. Cut. And then I'm gonna use those pinking shears again to trim that seam. That will also keep it from fraying with time. I'm always saying that, but it's really important when you have things that you use a lot or items that kids are gonna use. You wanna make sure they're gonna stay together well. Okay, I'm doing the other side now. Bring those 2 corners together. Make your little triangle. 2 inches down, and you don't have to do this. You could just leave it flat. I just like the dimension that it gives the bag, and it helps things kind of, I don't know, have a little more room inside. Okay, draw my line over. And this marker that I'm using is a fabric marker that, read the instructions on your package, but typically they dissolve with water or they just disappear over time. Magic. Okay, little back stitch, sew down, another little back stitch, cut your threads. Trim off the excess fabric, and you don't have to trim the fabric. You could actually just leave that inside. That works just fine too. Okay, now we're gonna go to our iron and press out our seams. Okay, this is what our bag looks like right now, and you can see the way we boxed out the bottom. Looks really awesome. Now we wanna press open the side seams. And this is why using a 1/2 inch seam allowance is really great, because it gives us a little more room for that small gap opening that we left. And you can see as I'm pressing it, the little gap is right there. Good job. Okay, keep pressing. And I'm actually just gonna do the sides. I'm not gonna worry about the bottom. So turn it right side out. There we go. And we're gonna press under about, I don't know, 1/4 inch. Just enough to keep that top raw edge enclosed in the casing. Go around to the other side. Okay, now we're gonna fold it under another about 1.5 inches, just enough so that it's enclosing that little opening that we left. Okay, we'll press that in place and keep going around. It might look like your casing is quite large, but you'll find that once you get both of those strings in there, it actually looks really good, and you're gonna be glad to have a little bit extra room. Okay, you don't have to pin this in place if you think you're fine sewing without pins. I'm just gonna pin a couple spots, and then we're gonna go back to our sewing machine. Okay, I'm sewing about 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the fabric. And you can start anywhere on the casing, because we're gonna go all the way around. So do a little back stitch, and to start sewing. I find that this is one of those projects that I tend to do last minute when my kids say, "Mom, I have a birthday party I'm going to." And it's like, It's really great to make a little bag, throw a little treat inside, or maybe a little simple game. And people are always amazed when you give them a handmade gift. I think because so often we just buy things at the store, that's really special to get something that's homemade. And this is a really quick thing to make. Okay, I'm almost back to the beginning here. Do a back stitch, cut your threads, and now we're ready to pull our strings through. Okay, I've got my bag and I've got my 2 strings cut 42 inches long. And you can cut them whatever size works for your bag. If you made a really little bag, you probably want something smaller than that. I just placed a safety pin on the end, and that's gonna help push it through the casing. So go to your first opening, push it in. This is similar to when we made a simple skirt and we pulled elastic through the waistband. Just gonna keep pushing it and moving it around. And when you get to the other side, make sure it's not caught in the seam or anything like that. There we go. And you'll see how it can come out that opening, but we want it to go back through to the other side. I love making these bags because the first time it was kind of one of those like aha moments when you realized, oh, this is not as tricky or complicated as it seems. It's actually pretty easy. I love figuring out the way people make things in the stores. Okay, there we go. It came back out the other side. Take off your safety pin, and then let's do the other string. Now with this one, it's gonna go in and out on the other side. So start at the other opening, press your string through, and try to keep it as flat as you can as you're going through so it doesn't get twisted. Guaranteed it's probably gonna get a little twisted. That's just how it goes, but just try your best. And when you get to this opening now, it might seem a little weird because there's these other strings in it. Just shimmy your way through, past those other strings, and go back around to the other side. Okay, we made it back to the other side. As you can see, here's my safety pin coming out. Pull it out, and pull the other string. And then you can kind of even these out. They will shift a little bit over time, but you can see one's longer than the other. Just pull this one, just make them all even. And then one last thing I like to do, you don't have to, but I think it's kind of fun to tie a little knot in the ends here. I did finish off these edges so they're not gonna fray, but sometimes if you did leave them raw, that would help a little bit to tie a knot. And I just think it looks kind of cute. Cute things are important, right? And there you go, a simple drawstring bag. For more ideas and tutorials, visit my website, madeeveryday.com. And for more information on sewing machines, go to babylock.com where it's all for the love of sewing. I'll see you next time. Bye.